Don't you miss the good old days when the world felt so massive, when anything could happen, no matter how fantastical, when each unknown, shrouded corner of your world could hold something incredible, when the darkness could hide something scary, something wonderful, if only you looked hard enough, cried it out, did the right things, followed the whispers of those who'd seen the path, or those that heard of it from someone else who heard it from someone else. And maybe you never found anything. Maybe you searched and searched, did everything they said you need to do, and still found only a wall in the corner. Maybe it had all been a lie, a fantasy. But wasn't it nice to believe that we could will magic out of the darkness? But now, well, there aren't any shades in the corner. Our world is bright, lit by a light that reveals every corner, that blares at us if there is something to be seen. And so we don't need to imagine, not without that darkness. And with that, the magic of the world fades, slightly, yet so tremendously. So do me a favor and close your eyes, just for a moment, and imagine, again. Open your eyes. Now we are ready to talk about Deltarune. So, those new chapters, huh? They were really something. This is my first video since their release and serves as a sort of rumination on some feelings I had when playing through them, and how they may tie into Deltarune's greater themes and world building. These new chapters really cemented the themes that were present in the previous chapters, but especially those that were highlighted in the Spamton sweepstakes. Basically everything that was present in Noelle's blog either straight up came back, like the Ice Palace page, or was given some sort of elaboration like the egg or Pian Pian. But the thing I want to discuss is a very specific brand of 2000s nostalgia and how important it is to Deltarune's overarching identity. And no, it's not the lo-fi GeoCities ugly CG gifs that early 2000s internet of it all. At least, not purely. Before we dive into that though, I've got a story to tell. Let's flash back to the year 2012. Long before Deltarune, long before Undertale. Can you believe people born in 2012 can now legally use Discord? Isn't that like, fucked up? Anyway, back to the story. In the year 2012, I was 8 years old. I would have just recently received a Nintendo 3DS and the game I got for it was Pokemon Black 2. At the time, I hardly knew English, so I didn't really know how the game worked. Still, I had played it for hundreds of hours as a kid. The game was so unlike anything else I had played at the time. It really felt like it had a sort of boundless magic to it. It felt like around every corner, in every oddly shaped empty cave or dungeon, I could find something incredible if only I went through the exact right steps. After all, from hapless post-game exploring, I was able to find legendaries like Latios, Heatran, and the Lake Trio. The game was so massive to my little brain, who knew what sorts of things were still unknown to me? At a certain point, I began looking up stuff about the game online, and one of the videos I remember stumbling across was this one. Catching Luigi in the Abyssal Ruins. And here's another one, Catching Ho-Ho at Bell Tower, which is a weird title when you remember that it isn't called Bell Tower, it's Celestial Tower, but I digress. These two videos were by Tyranitartube, a channel that I've probably been subscribed to for over a decade now on YouTube. Complete tangent, by the way, but like, does anybody know what's up with him? I've wanted to study this man's brain for years now. Anyway, back to the point. Watching these videos as a kid was an incredibly inspiring experience. You're telling me that there's something even deeper in these games that I can excavate if I just do the right things? You're telling me there's more to see that I missed? You're telling me that this small world in the palm of my hand is boundless to an extent I hadn't considered before? That anything could be possible? That this was a real world that extended far past what my own eyes could perceive. A world that breathes and changes and hides things from you? There could be something incredible hiding in every unexplored corner? Of course, none of it was true. It was all a hoax, a spoof. No matter how hard I tried to replicate these things, they could never happen. The world was just a little smaller, a little less magical than I believed. Nowadays, you could just pull up Bulbapedia or Cerebi and check every single thing you need to. Seconds after the game dropped, someone already stripped its bones clean and put the meat online. Heck, sometimes it happens days before, too. You no longer get the magical feeling of hearing about being able to play as Luigi in Mario Galaxy from your friend who heard it from his cousin. You don't need to discover what happens when you use a shiny stone on Roselia by pure trial and error, only to be enthralled by the unexpected result. You can no longer be deceived by your friend who swears he was totally able to find Entei and Emerald, but that his save file got deleted so he can't show you. Now, it feels like the world has grown so small. There's nothing to find that hasn't been found already. There's no believing that there could be something beyond what the code, the script lays out. There's no believing that you can hold the world in the palm of your hand. Now all that there is are the numbers written on the wall. The walls around you feebly keeping a dead world's seams from showing. Walls built with trees and seas. You see? You understand too much now. You've seen beyond the veil, beyond the darkness. You've turned on the light. Now the world around you is just as it is. Dull, plain, normal. What were you expecting from tearing down the curtain? Wasn't it wonderful, though, when you believed there was something to find in the dark? I guess what I'm saying is, don't you miss that feeling? Don't you miss exploring?
Don't you miss exploring, Kris? Back when the four of us were kids? Gosh, remember that night we explored the forest behind the grave?
And this is finally when we get back to Deltarune. Because as you've probably pieced together by now, Deltarune is a game built from the ground up around this exact feeling. The feeling of there being a world beyond the game's limits, that there's something lurking in the dark corners. To me, this is one of the aspects of Deltarune that feels the most unique. It's not the only game to have obscure secrets that you could only find by doing 3 backflips and divinating with Matthew Patrick, but there's a big difference between a game like FNAF and Deltarune. One actually has a competently told story.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
I love the young people.
Deltarune ties the very experience of finding secrets in games into its characters and world building. Unlike most other games with secrets like this, where they only reveal optional or frustratingly integral tidbits of lore and are otherwise completely throwaway, this specific side of Deltarune is integral to the construction of its narrative and characters. The most crucial aspect of Deltarune to discuss in relation to this isn't actually any of the Gaster stuff, or secret eggs, or Shadow Crystal bosses, but rather darkness and dark worlds. Or, more specifically, what we now know about dark worlds thanks to Rousey's exposition at the start of Chapter 3. Despite being practically the first thing we are told in Chapter 3, I haven't seen a lot of people discuss the full implications and significance of what Rousey says. Probably because everyone equipped to do so got distracted by Rousey nonchalantly dropping a blatant gasterism or image friend showing up.
Feel them.
Understandable, I suppose. But let's think back to what Rousey says, and specifically, how he described darkness. Pay close attention to what exactly makes darkness so relevant to creating the Dark World fantasy. You see, when it gets dark, things become more indistinct. A chair can look like a monster. A poster can look like it's moving. Your eyes can't see the truth anymore. Let me skip ahead a little bit, past the blatant gasterism, to when he describes what would happen if you go darker than dark. You could start to see things again, and hear them, and feel them. As he described it, the reason that a world is created from darkness is because of imagination. When things are unclear, or when we can't make out something in full, our minds fill in the blanks. Think back to when you were a kid, when you turned off the lights at night and could imagine any manner of monsters lurking in each shadowed corner. The bump in the night, the fear of the dark. There's a reason nightlights for kids are so prevalent. Would it be hasty if I made the connection between this idea and the nightlights on Asriel's side of the bedroom? Just some food for thought. Regardless, let's circle back to the gasterism Rousey dropped. Before chapters 3 and 4, everybody, including me, thought that getting darker than dark and the chair from the sweepstakes were foreshadowing for a dark world within a dark world, a layering matryoshka doll of reality starting from our world, going to the light world, and continuing on into darker and darker worlds of fantasy. But now, that's been totally thrown out the window. As Ralsei explained, dark worlds themselves are darker than dark, and if you open a dark fountain within a dark world, all you'll make is a new Kirby final boss. So I think we, as a community, need to redefine what being darker than dark actually means. And I think I have a pretty good idea. Sorry, Andrew, but I gotta borrow your catchphrase for a second.
Deploy the dark diagram.
Over on the left, you have light. This is the normal world on a bright, sunny day. Nothing sketchy going on here. Everything is as it appears, but that also leaves nothing to the imagination. As we move to the right, we subtract light. It goes from noon to dusk to night, getting darker and darker. Darkness, after all, is just the absence of light. As we remove light, we remove detail, leaving room for interpretation, burning holes into reality that we can fill in with fantasy. As we get closer to total darkness, the less of reality we can perceive, and the more we fill in the blanks, though we're still firmly planted in reality. Though, when we take out all the light, we reach absolute darkness, where we can't see anything, and without a point of reference, the canvas is too massive to fill in. This is what I'm labeling the null zone, a realm where we've taken away all reality without filling in the void with anything else. But consider what removing light, or adding darkness, to reality did, what it meant. If light is reality, then its opposite, darkness, is not unreality, it's fantasy. It's the imagination that we've used to fill in the gaps. So let's ask the question once more. What happens if you go darker than dark? What happens when, starting from nothing, we build with fantasy? Well, now we've entered the realm of fiction. And this, my friends, is where we reach the dark worlds. But let's pump the brakes for a second. Wasn't this already common knowledge? Dark worlds being analogous to fiction is as white bread as interpretations go. And I'm aware, don't worry, but that's not necessarily where this ends. Because, if you'll recall, we ended up establishing that darkness itself is a manifestation of fantasy, of imagination, of creativity. Light is reality, truth, and certainty. Let's look back at the diagram for a second. Let's imagine what sorts of stories are made at different points on this graph. As previously discussed, the leftmost point is simply unadulterated reality. If we move just a little further, we reach a true story, perhaps a vivid memory of an event from earlier in the day. It's primarily a recounting of previous events, but colored with blotches of darkness that can be filled. Moving even further towards the null zone, we hit a true story shrouded by mystery. Perhaps some unsolved crime or missing persons case, that sort of thing, with a basis in reality yet being overtaken by darkness. Now, once we hit fiction, the line seemingly becomes effectively meaningless. Once you've hit unreality, the metaphor seems to break apart since fiction can be so boundless. Right? Let me ask you this. If Deltarune is so fascinated with darkness as a creative force within its narrative, why is the soul's most important power, the one that it uses to seal dark fountains, the one that is sung about in Don't Forget, it's light? One could just chalk it up to us being literally the most real being in Deltarune by default, and that's most certainly a part of the reason, but I believe it goes even deeper. Keep in mind, it is our power, this light, that is used to seal dark fountains which give the dark worlds form from darkness. Without the dark fountains, the lights turn back on, and the fantasy is broken. The world is now as it is in reality. Cards, computer software, images on a fading screen, words on a page. We now understand the world, its rules, its makeup, and can no longer see through the same lens of shadow, of darkness, of fantasy. This is also why the Titan and its spawn's weakness is the light of the soul. How else to deal with the fear of the dark than turn on the light? You probably see where I'm going with this, so let me cut to the chase. That diagram I showed you earlier, well, it's a little bit misleading. You see, it makes the assumption that the darkness, the realm of fiction, is entirely separate from reality, that they exist in a realm of pure imagination. This isn't true. For all the time I spent working on this metaphysical explanation, the truth of the matter is that dark worlds are just built off of the light world. Once the lights turn on, the dark world seemingly ceases to be. It's much the same in reality. Such is the power of the light. Once you expose even your dearest stories to the light, to the absolute reality of what they are, they lose all power and fantasy. They become words on a page, moving pictures, uncompromising code. But such is the fate of darkness. Night can't last forever. And Toby Fox took that personally. What does it mean to choose eternity? With the new chapters, it's become increasingly apparent that Deltarune isn't interested in entertaining dark worlds being escapist fantasies anymore. Let me break it down for you. If you were to believe that the message of Deltarune was something as shallow as too much escapism is bad and you need to touch grass, you'd have a really hard time squaring the increasingly central conflict of Susie fighting for Darkness personhood. The game is very clearly framing Ralsei's stance, the one that frames dark worlds as escapist fantasies for Lightners to abandon as they see fit, as the wrong stance. And Susie, the de facto protagonist of the narrative, is railing against this notion and fighting to give Ralsei the room to be his own person beyond his role. No pun intended. Be it as a Darkner or within the prophecy. Deltarune seems a lot more interested in exploring the inherent power imbalance present in the Lightner and Darkner dichotomy, and, inversely, the dynamic between player and game. Undertale has already deconstructed aspects of the suspension of disbelief, but Deltarune seems to be going one step further. And that is how we get to the concept of eternity. Remember this, Skeet? Ask yourself this. Have you ever said something along these lines? About missing a character from a story, from a movie or a show or a game? Where do you say this? After all, you could always go back and see them again. They're still where you left them, in the pages of the book, in the frames of film, in the game. So why do you mourn someone who never died? Well, because they did die in a sense. Because for a fleeting moment in time, they were alive to you. They grew and changed and you didn't know what to expect from them next. But when the story ends, that stops. They stop growing, they stop changing, they stop living. And like a lost loved one, all that you have left are the memories and frozen fragments of the life they led. Videos you can rewind endlessly, 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 endlessly. Videos you can rewind endlessly. Messages you can read and reread to experience the past. In other words, when their story ends, they petrify. Sound familiar? Petrification, stagnation, the true meaning of eternity. Hey, 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 hey! Looks like we've stumbled upon a core theme! You know what that means? It's time to get out the corkboard and the red string, because we've got a few connections to make. First, let's start with the most obvious. The roaring. The end of the prophecy, the end of the game, the final thing that will come to pass. Of course that the seeming end of the Dark World would lead to the petrification of Darkners. As their story reaches the end, of course they would freeze. Of course they would be kept in stasis, in an endless night. And that connects to a whole lot of other things. Most obviously, to the Roaring Night. Or to be more specific, the Night Gang. And to be even more specific, Carol. Carol has a strong affinity for preserving things. She keeps everything of value at her home for safety. She bronzes Noelle's paper snowflakes to preserve them for longer. I can't stress this enough. Literal symbols of ephemeral beauty that she fights to preserve. She's associated with the cold and ice. She wants to figuratively freeze the things she cares about so they're never lost. I wonder why that might be relevant to her. And watch out, folks, because she's not alone in trying to preserve a past that is past. Because alongside her, we have Asgore, ranked #1 most divorced man in history in recent polls. His main motivation is literally to bring things back to how they used to be, with his family back together and happy again. These two, alongside the Knight and Kris and maybe even Alvin, all seem to, at least in some aspects, represent this side of choosing eternity, of failing to create a new future because you're too afraid to taint the past. I'll cut this bit off here though, since this aspect of the narrative is still actively developing, and I want more concrete information before I feel comfortable analyzing it in detail. And, to be honest, thinking about the logistics and motives of the Night Gang makes my head spin. But enough of that, because we got to follow the string of eternity to our next major player related to this theme, Susie. A lot of Chapter 4 was spent setting up Susie's relationship to this exact idea, of choosing eternity as Gerson puts it. She talks about how she wants tomorrow to be the same as yesterday. And when asked to pick an ending for her story, she bites back that she wouldn't have an ending. Now hold on there, this all seems very similar to what Carol and her crew have got going on. What's the deal with that? Is this going to be a flawed view that Susie currently has that will need to be challenged and eventually overcome? Well, I don't exactly think so. And let me tell you why. When Susie exclaims that she wouldn't have an ending, that it'd be better if things just went on forever, Gerson doesn't rebuke her or frame that desire as a bad thing. In fact, he tells her to hold it close, and that exact hope is the one thing that can overwrite the dark when the roaring comes, the white pen of hope. Let's pay close attention to the metaphors Gerson uses. An ocean of ink washing across the pages, a white pen. He's making the subtext text, the darkness being ink and a pen of hope being needed to channel it. The roaring in this context seems to be an entirely neutral force that can be used for different ends. I imagine the Night Gang wants to utilize the ink to preserve something of value, or to try and recapture something of the past, whereas Susie and the Fun Gang will use it to craft a new ending, a new future. In other words, Susie's desire to keep the story going forever is what will allow her to write her own ending outside of the prophecy's purview. After all, to make a new future, we first need the darkness to give us room to imagine it. Which serves as a pretty good segue into talking about Hey, is it just me or is Gerson implying that the prophecy is associated with light? A glimmer, words that shine bright. In contrast, wandering away from the prophecy, going between the lines, is described as heading towards darkness. How does that make any sense? I thought we established that it was darkness that represented fiction and fantasy. Well, yes. But the prophecy isn't necessarily fantasy or creativity. I mean, think about it. Think about how it restricts our characters. How much of the struggle of breaking it will come to take center stage in the coming chapters. Prophecy isn't creative because it's a single set, known variable. Like we established, the light is understanding. It's knowing. It's leaving no room for interpretation or imagination. It is static and sterile. It simply is. The prophecy is also, as many have come to agree, a metaphor for the very nature of games as a medium. A game's narrative can only afford so much freedom, so much world in the first place. Everything within a game needs to have been created, accounted for, and programmed in. You can't play as Luigi in Super Mario 64 because he wasn't programmed into the game. You can't go up to the Hill Valley Sky Trees in Super Mario Galaxy because the bounds of the map don't allow you to. You can't find Mew in RBY because it was never under the truck. No matter what, you can't change that at the end of FF7, Aerith is still dead. No matter what you do, what choices you make, the story has already been written for you. Every choice you made has been laid out before you even started playing. And so, you can't change the ending. But when have we ever been ones to accept that, huh? So let's set the stage once more. We have a blinding light that forces us into a single direction. We have a game with boundaries, with rules and a set story and determined events that we are powerless to change. with false choices that have already been made for us. So, how do we break free? Well, that's simple. By breaking it. Breaking free of its bounds. Once the light has illuminated the game for what it is easily explored and followed, the mind begins to wander towards the darkened corners with the hope that there'll be more to be imagined beyond the bounds of what the light allows us to see. And from that hope, new stories are born. Sis Gerson says, you get better ideas by going the wrong way, by going beyond the bounds set by others. Burning bright, burning black. L is real. There must be a way to unlock Luigi. If only we try everything, find a code and look harder. We imagine and come up with elaborate expansions to what actually exists in the game. And eventually, our imagination becomes real, and we put Luigi in the game. There isn't a Mew under the truck, but if you do just the right thing, push the game to its limit, in just the right way, you could find Mew somewhere else. And so much more lurking in the dark. Sure, there may be only one ending lit by the light, but in the dark, we make our own story. We write our own ending. We write and we write and we write, and so the wheel turns as we choose eternity. An eternity where they get to keep growing and changing, living, where we don't forget what they meant to us, and bring them forth into the darkness of the future. A new future. Perhaps that is why Gaster finds it so interesting when we attempt to defy the bounds of the game by attempting to defeat the night. And this is what Deltarune, in many ways, is about. Making a story live beyond its own bounds. And what better vessel to use to represent that idea than the breaking of the very bounds of its medium? And, more specifically, the stories we told of the secrets hiding in the dark. About creating a new mythos from the whispers of the shadows. And this brings us back to the late 90s and 2000s, but to be blunt and more accurate, to our childhoods. To why Deltarune was so fascinated with the nostalgia we hold for these kinds of potential secrets, and why it seems to be trying so hard to replicate them. From the egg rooms to the 1225 secret, to the secret S-rank boards, to the shadow crystals, to being able to defeat the scripted Lost Boss, to everything about Gaster, and even to the weird route. They all, in one way or another, harken back to the aesthetics of gaming urban legends and creepypastas like the ones I have already mentioned. The S-rank minigames of the Weird Route evoke and borrow aesthetics from the countless creepypastas about breaking games. The reason these specific stories and aesthetics are being utilized is that they represent a radical form of derivative creativity, of taking the darkness within a work and running with it and developing your own lore surrounding it. Think of how many stories were inspired by the myth of Lavender Town Syndrome, or by the uneasy mysteries of Majora's Mask, or by the ghost stories of Herobrine. Not just their content or context, but how they made you feel. Stories like Petscop, Valley Verde, Lacey's Games, and yes, Deltarune itself. Deltarune wants you to treat it like that, to whisper about secret routes with your friends, to wonder about possible secrets that lay even deeper down, if only you look a little harder, to believe that there lies something beyond the veil of darkness. But this style of urban legend is highly localized to a very particular moment in time. Specific kind of nostalgia that Tubby Fox is almost certainly drawing from personal experience, and that of a million other millennials in and around his age bracket. But as I said, it was a moment in time, one that's past. As I alluded to earlier, with the development of the internet and of fandom spaces and of data mining communities, these sorts of mysteries can no longer gain traction, not when the answer is so easily and immediately accessible. The internet has become a bright spotlight that disperses any and all darkness immediately, such that there is no need to imagine, no need to venture and explore the dark. So I ask you again, don't you miss exploring? Who knows, maybe you'll find something. But with your light, at what cost? Maybe some answers are best left in the dark. Deltarune will end in darkness. Of this fact I am sure, But let's take a step back. What do I mean when I say this? Well, have you played Mother 3? Mother 3's ending is, well, it's weird. Especially for an officially licensed Nintendo game that was released before a lot of Deltarune fans were even born. Skipping past a lot of other Deltarune parallels, once Lucas pulls the final needle and awakens the dragon, well, looks like the end of the world. Hellfire is raining down, everything is getting destroyed, it all fades to black, and then... end. Or, so it seems. You can walk around the darkness, and you can hear from NPCs. They talk about how everybody is alive and well, how the world didn't end. And then the game turns to you, the you in real life playing the game, and says, thanks. And it asks if you'll meet again. And then it says, don't forget us. And it thanks you again. Then it ends. For real. Toby Fox is a great artist, and great artists steal. Deltarune will end in darkness, and that's a good thing. Because darkness is imagination. It's shielded from the light of reality, from our light. The characters of Deltarune will experience a new future, one that is meant for them, one veiled in darkness, because we can't see it, we can't know it, not for certain. And isn't that wonderful? Because now, the cycle can continue. Just as Itoi's final capstone on the Mother series came to an ending shrouded in darkness, hoping we wouldn't forget what it meant to care about it, now as Toby's pen etches its ink into the final act, Toby Fox will end it with a blank page, look us in our eyes, see our hope, our love, our dreams, and the stories burning bright within us, and hand us the pen. He'll tell us, if you care about these characters, you really only need to do one thing to allow them to survive. Don't forget. And that'll be the end. But when has that ever stopped us? That's the end of the video. It took a lot longer than I expected. I was originally just hoping for this video to be like, I don't know, 20 minutes long, 15 minutes long, like a short thing. I just wanted to talk about the feelings I had when I played Chapter 3 and got to the S-Rank minigames, and I was like, it felt like playing a natural living creepypasta. It was such a cool experience doing it on release day, like alone in my room and all, like 8 p.m. at night. It was peak, and that was sort of the feelings I wanted to explore in this video mostly. Then it sort of spiraled into like a big discussion about Deltarune as a whole and the ending, and touching on a lot of the major themes and stuff, so that was unexpected. If you like this video and subscribe this channel. If you want to support me, like I said, you can subscribe. I have a Patreon. So far, I only have one patron. Give me money if you want. You don't have to though. I haven't updated the Patreon in like a long time. So if you don't want to do that, just literally subscribing and liking is fine enough for me. It's not like these videos are monetized anyway. So do whatever you want. I'm not your mom. But if you really want to support me, I'm working on an Undertale fan game. I'm directing it. It's called Undertale Cooking with Kindness. It's a Green Soul fan game. You can see the trailer. I probably put a link to it right here. And hopefully you go check it out. Check out the trailer and maybe subscribe to the Game Jolt page. We're hoping to get the demo out before the end of the year. We're closing in on an internal demo and starting proper playtesting, so stay tuned for that. I'm very excited. I've been working on it for a long time, and I hope you have a good day and I don't know, pet a dog or something.